are important for Ohio and many immigrants are small business owners. It costs both time and money to come to court or have employees who work for court. How will you respond to these concerns of small business owners? Each candidate has 2 minutes to respond, and we'll start with Mr. Satola.
Okay. Obviously, each case is different. What the case would be about for a small business owner. While I am someone who likes to do things personally, meaning that all through each of the stages of the case, if it were to be in court, I would like to see the people in court, or in where I would be working at the courthouse. But I know that sometimes for the preliminary stages of a case, that could be handled as well by the small business owner's attorney or by their representative, or I certainly would also be amenable to handling some of those early matters by telephone, so it would be a little bit easier for the small business owner to stay at their business and not have to take the time to come downtown, find parking, and spend whatever amount of time it would be downtown with their cases. So I would try to be as efficient as possible and accommodating as possible to any person's well-expressed need they may have. Because I know small business owners sometimes do not have the luxury of being able to leave that small business without leaving it alone. So I certainly would understand that and would not be stringent if it truly was a hardship to do it individually.
Throughout my career is to be very efficient. I think that we need to be mindful of people's schedules. One thing I think that we can do is to continue to have attorney conferences and not make the parties come down unless absolutely necessary, so that people aren't missing work, kids aren't missing school, things of that nature. I know that some municipal courts do have night court. I know that for my husband, who's a defense attorney and practices in courts throughout the state of Ohio, that can sometimes be very helpful to not only attorneys but to people that work during the day. I don't know if this would be something that would be feasible at juvenile court, but I'm interested in looking into it to see if maybe we could do that once a week or once a month and hold a night court so that people don't have to miss work. Thank you.
Okay. Well, at my firm, Reminger, I've been representing businesses for 25 years. I primarily handle civil litigation. So my clients include, a portion of my clients include Save-A-Lot, Best Buy, McDonald's, Walmart, and smaller businesses as well. I'm in the process right now of tracking down former employees because of litigation, so I understand these concerns. I will tell you though, because again this court is the Court of Appeals, it's a little unique. Everything is primarily handled on paper, on briefs, other than having to show up for a 15-minute oral argument. But I can tell you, because of my experiences and because I understand and the business side of things and the litigation, those briefs that are written, whether you can afford the best lawyer in town or the least expensive attorney in town, what's in the briefs are important. But because of my experience, I know how to do the research and get to the issue, so it's going to be applied fairly for everyone, including those with small businesses. That's how it's a little unique in the Court of Appeals, but that's the best I can answer with regard to small businesses.
I'm a small business owner myself, having a 4-attorney law firm, so I'm very sensitive to the disruption that a lawsuit can play in a small business owner's life and business. And because of that, I think the court needs to really focus on, as was mentioned before by Ms. O'Malley, having as much telephone conference done as possible so it's the least disruptive to the small business owner's business and family. Another thing is making sure that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected in my courtroom, that the cases move along very quickly. There is a sense of sort of a dark cloud that can loom over a small business owner's head when there's a lawsuit pending. And seeking closure to that lawsuit, I know from my own experience as a small business owner, is very important. So those are 2 things I'm going to focus on, and I'm sensitive as a small business owner to those issues.
But I would concur with most comments that have been made by my colleagues here. I too am very sensitive to the issues with regards to small businesses. My mother owned a small business in the city of Cleveland. My daughter's an entrepreneur. She owns a business as well. As a prosecutor, I understand individuals are subpoenaed to court, the inconvenience that it can bear on them if you bring them to court repetitively. And so I too would be very sensitive to that issue and believe that telephone conferences, attorney conferences could work, as well as just insisting that the individuals are there simply at trial. But each case is, you have to deal with each case on a case-by-case basis, but I definitely would be sensitive to that issue.
Thank you. On that issue, I would just like to go over to the criminal side as well. Is that in criminal cases, I have been advocating for years that we don't bring criminal defendants that are on probation down to court, that are on bond down to court for every pretrial, for the same reason. They have to leave their job, they have to leave their either small business or large business, and we only need them down there. Only the criminal defendants that have gotten cases where we're going to be able to accomplish something. And the same thing would be with civil cases. I would say, I think over the past few years, with everybody having cell phones and text messaging and stuff, it's really kind of easy if you're in communication with your lawyers as to when we need you in court and how to get there. In fact, a lot of times on my cases right now, I verify with my clients via text messaging as to when I need them in court the next time. So, you know, when you have to be in court for certain cases, you have to be there. But on civil cases that are in common police court, you're just going to have to probably appear for your deposition if you are being deposed. That would be outside of the court. And if one of your employees gets called to deposition, he would have to take time to, you know, to answer the deposition, answer the questions. And then at court, just so you know, in civil trials last year, I think there were 44 in the whole county jury trial. So there's not a lot. There's a lot of resolution cases. And that's really what our job is, to settle disputes and try to leave the jury only if we have to.
Asian Americans have been subject to increasing racial bias and targeting in the past few years. How will you ensure that your courtroom operates without racial bias? Each candidate has 2 minutes to respond, and we'll start with Ms. O'Malley.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of racial biases that go on within the criminal justice system. In juvenile court, most of the trials are heard by the judge. Only on very rare exceptions are there jury trials. So the judge actually makes all those decisions. And, you know, I've always prided myself on being fair, being impartial. I currently charge all of my own cases, and I don't think that race has anything to do with whether someone should be charged with a crime or convicted of a crime. I'm a firm believer in looking at the facts of the case and looking at the charges before someone and applying those facts. So if elected, I will continue to do that from the bench.
You raise a very interesting point, and a good one, because it applies not just to certain minorities, but all minorities. I mean, it comes up all the time. We turn on the news every day, and I think we're a fool if we don't acknowledge there are implicit biases in every person. And I think what's really important, and where you want your elected officials to acknowledge, there are implicit biases. Bring them to your conscious level, and you can change those. Now, how it operates in the courtroom, again, Court of Appeals is a little unique because we don't interact with the individuals one-on-one. Everything's done on paper. But throughout my career, race, age, sex, shouldn't play a factor in the analysis of the law. It's like making sure that those judgments and the laws apply fairly and equally to everyone, regardless of their race, sex, any protected class. And like I said, I've been doing it for 25 years. I will continue to do that in the most objective manner possible. And by acknowledging it and applying the law fairly.
I agree with Ms. Sheehan. Bias exists. Racial bias has no place in our society, let alone our courtrooms. My campaign is focused on one of compassion for people, and I express compassion both in my daily practice, but in the campaign what I've been expressing to voters is I think it's important for a judge, because unlike Ms. Sheehan's court where she's going for, in Common Pleas we actually do get to meet the individuals who are going through a case. What I plan on doing is meeting everybody who comes before me in my courtroom. I think compassion can be expressed in a simple way of shaking someone's hand, saying good morning or good afternoon. And when you're a judge, you're viewed as this sort of powerful, trusted position. And I think one way to address bias and help bring down some barriers between members of our communities is to treat everyone with compassion, express respect, and treat everyone with dignity. As Ms. Sheehan just said, it's really, bias exists. I think what you have to do is acknowledge that and deal with it. And I think that's important, not only in the courtroom, but as a society in general.
Biases in the criminal law in the jury trial, there have been constitutional cases that have come down to address directly the issue of bias. And usually when it would occur is during the jury selection process. And let's just say if it was a criminal defendant was black, and that the people that were being removed from the jury were all black members, and it got to a problem that then the jury would not have really a person of his peers. So there has been a lot of litigation in that field, and obviously it would apply to all areas of the law for any protected class. So I would think that everybody is keenly aware of it, and everybody tries to get everybody to, one of the instructions you would give a jury is to set aside all your biases. We all have biases, but we don't want to make decisions based upon that bias. And what I say that, what I've been advocating as I go around the county right here is that I promise everybody that myself and anybody that is on my staff will treat anybody that comes into my courtroom, either as a litigant or as a lawyer, with respect. And I think that's what we need to do. We treat everybody with respect. Bias is going to be a problem.
Thank you so much. Definitely I can relate to the issue at hand, and I would definitely say that I'm very sensitive to that. I too stand on my record of 38 years of being a public servant and how I have served the people. And I've done so in a way that I believe that I can say that I have been impartial, I have been fair, I have been compassionate, all at the right times and when it is needed. I believe also that with regards to assuring individuals that they will come before the court and they will be given the due respect that they're definitely due. And I stand on the fact that I have served in every capacity in a courtroom except for the court reporter and the defendant. And I think that gives me an additional sensitivity to the positions in the courtroom and the place that they, and the specific positions that individuals play in the entire process. So I'm definitely sensitive to that, and anything that I can do in presenting myself to people and individuals who come before the court that show that I am impartial, that is definitely on my track, and that's where I intend to move forward.
A lot of the sentiments have been expressed by the others beforehand. Primarily what my answer to this is the respect that would be shown in my courtroom would come from the top. I am someone who has been fortunate to have met people of all races, ages, nationalities, disabilities, and the like. And there really is something about having actually worked with people around the world. My first job actually was all age, and I was one of the first employees of a Cuyahoga restaurant in Shaker Heights. But I have, in growing up, have always been fortunate to have been taught by my parents and my family to be respectful of everyone. So that's something that's deeply ingrained in me, and that will not change in being a judge. Yes, there is racial bias of all kinds that can be found in the courts, and best answer I can give is that I am aware of it, acknowledge it, don't hold it, and would hope that that is reflected from me and from anyone that would be involved in the vote.
Question. The opioid epidemic kills about 14 Ohioans every day and costs as much as $8.8 billion each year. What are your thoughts about responding as a judge to the opioid epidemic? Each candidate has 2 minutes to respond, and we'll start with Mr. Darling.
I have personal experience with respect to the opioid crisis, having represented in my criminal defense practice many citizens who struggle with addiction, and on the personal side, experience, because I lost my father some years ago to unchecked addiction. And one way I'm going to be able to focus on this is to ensure that citizens who need the help are referred to the sources in their community that can help them recover. I think, as was said perhaps by Mr. McGinty in his opening, failure is part of recovery. And I think at times, in my experience in practicing before the courts, sometimes judges have been a little bit too quick to punish someone who's trying to recover, who has one or several setbacks. And I think we're starting to change our views on that. My views are informed from having practiced in the courts with clients who are challenged with that addiction. And unfortunately, I've lost a lot of clients to unchecked addiction. I think what I have to do as a judge, and I hope all the panelists will agree, is the more resources we can have in the community to place citizens who are struggling with addiction, and let's try and keep them there, even when they struggle with that recovery and have some setbacks. One of the messages I've had throughout my campaign is to judge less. And what I mean by that is an ironic statement from a candidate for judge. But what I mean by that is people who are struggling with addiction don't need our judgment. They need our support. And that's the viewpoint I take if I should be so fortunate enough to become a judge.
This opiate crisis has swept over Ohio. It's just unbelievable the way it's taken over. And the reaction is always behind, all right? Government is always behind when it comes to reaction to what we need to do with certain crises. And now they're trying to catch up to it. They're trying to catch up to it. But practicing lawyers have been aware of this crisis of drugs, right? Prior to even, the opiate crisis coming in, and then fentanyl and carfentanil getting into some of the drugs. But again, treatment is the key instead of punishment for users. And what I like to say is that honesty has to be at the foundation of anybody that wants to get sober, that wants to get free of drugs or alcohol. And if that person can be honest with their sponsor, if they're in the 12-step program of AA or NA, if they can be honest with their probation officer, if they can be honest with their intensive outpatient treatment program director, then I can work with that person. Okay? But if the person loses honesty at the court level and they're not telling the truth about the problems that they have, then I think there's where we're going to run into a little bit of a problem. You have to be honest, acknowledge that you have a problem, and work to solve it. I think I'm quite capable of doing that. I do it with my clients on a daily, if not multiple times a day, problems with my clients, and that has to do with substance abuse. We have to keep working at it and working at it. The one word I'll leave you with is that in treating with somebody that's using and addicted is frustration. And as a practitioner, as a practicing lawyer, I see a lot of frustration at times for myself. I have to take a deep breath and go back and remember this is what I'm dealing with. And hopefully I can take that to the bench with me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I I would concur with my panelists, colleagues here with most of what they indicated, but I'd like to add additionally, as a prosecutor, I have dealt with many substance abuse issues, and my goal has always been treatment for those individuals, always to reach them where they are and try to take them where we would like for them to be. And that's what I will continue to have as primarily with regards to my approach as it relates to these particular issues. The thing that really bothers me, though, when we talk about the opioid crisis, is that we've had a drug issue, a drug culture issue for years. We had the crack issue and so forth many years ago. And, you know, there weren't all of these hands on deck with regards to treatment. Actually, the voice was put everyone in prison. And so it's good to see that we have come full circle, and we are now saying that this is the approach that we should take. And so I'm happy to be a part of, will be happy to be a part of that particular process and moving us forward in another direction. Thank you.
Following the sentiments of many of you heard before me, I am someone that understands that every case is an individual case, and many are alike. But one of the things that's important is for those that would come before the court with an opioid issue, an addiction issue, and something that is where they are caught in the opioid trap, treatment is an important factor. And that's something that I would try to encourage as much as possible. As Bill McGinty said, the reality is there's plenty of jail space and not enough treatment space for people to get the treatment they need. But also some of the characters that we will run against will be people who are major distributors, people that are the cause of the opioid epidemic. And those persons also need to be responsible for what they have done to the community, or what they are doing for the community. If somebody truly wants to turn their life around, I have had experience with people who are former dealer defendants who turned their life around, and I would certainly encourage that. But we also realize that each of us will face people that have no desire to help us. So those cases may be dealt with more in the traditional criminal justice system. But where treatment is appropriate, where treatment is hopeful, and where treatment is something where the hopefully changing someone's life is available, then I echo everyone else's support in that.
Thank you for this great question. Obviously, it is a very serious epidemic that is plaguing our community. And like I said, when I was in our economic crime unit, I primarily focused on opioid-related cases. So I handled cases where we had citizens in the community who were forging prescriptions, going out and filling those at pharmacies, and then selling those pills out on the street. So these cases that I would handle had about 15 to 20 defendants. Everyone had their different roles. And in those cases, I would advocate for probation and treatment for the lower level people who were going out and filling these scripts just to benefit their own addiction. Whereas the people who were at the top of that chain and who were running these pill mills, we would secure lengthy sentences to hold them accountable because they were actually putting thousands and thousands of pills out on the street and preying upon people who did have an addiction. Additionally, I have prosecuted doctors for running pill mills out of their offices and nurses who were stealing medicine from their jobs to support their own addiction. So I'm a firm believer in drug treatment. I'm also aware that a lot of our criminal cases that come through the system have a drug addiction component to it. And I think that we all need to keep an open mind, and we need to make sure that we are holding those accountable where we should be, but also trying to seek treatment and being patient with those people, because we know that going to addiction is a lifelong problem that someone will have to deal with. So I think the court system needs to be aware of that. They need to be open-minded, and they need to continue to try to seek the best services for these people that have those addictions.
And obviously echo everyone's sentiments. Really, what we are facing an issue in our society, and like any issue, you want people that are in these leadership positions to get involved and make a difference. I'm sure you're aware there's a drug court in common police court to help deal with these issues. There's, right now, I'm not debating issue 1, but that's out there too. There's things that people are now doing to get involved, and that's what's really important, that you want people that are going to address the issue and get involved. I'm a former president of the Women's Bar Association. I've held leaderships in a lot of community organizations to try to solve some of these problems. Again, the Court of Appeals reviews these lower courts, but I think the big takeaway is, will people get involved? Will they help to address this without, put people that need rehabilitation, let them get the help they need. People that are going to be held accountable, let them get held accountable. But get involved, be active, and be part of the change.
We're going to ask Ms. Coy to introduce herself. So you have 4 minutes to introduce yourself and explain why you're running for office, and then we'll ask that you then continue on and answer the question. Okay?
I'm probably not going to take the whole 4 minutes. My name is Lorraine Coyne. I'm running for judge of Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas, General Division, same as several of the people that are on the panel, which is adult felonies and civil cases that are valued at more than $15,000. I was a criminal prosecutor for 21 years. Right now I do criminal defense. I'm running for judge because it started with, I really didn't want to be a judge, but a lot of my friends and coworkers told me that they think I would make a great judge. And so I started thinking about it and I decided to run. And I believe one of the main reasons I want to run is I do want to make a difference in life. I don't want to just live my life every single day, going out to dinner or hanging out with friends. But I do, in my personal life, get involved in volunteering. I've worked with an autism unit raising funds. I was a big sister of Big Brothers and Sisters for a long time. I think it's important for us to get involved in our community and be involved with folks in your own neighborhoods and to try to just make a better difference in life. And I'm going to just go right to this question. This is really a tough topic. First of all, I know back in probably around 2014 there was maybe 100 or less opioid overdoses in Cuyahoga County, and right now I believe there's been over 900 this year. There isn't a simple answer to this question. It's going to take a big team approach, and the judges do have to be involved in this. Most of the time, in felony drug cases, when somebody gets caught either selling drugs or just possessing them, they get 3, 4, 5 chances before they actually go to jail. And a lot of people are like, oh, are we overburdening our prisons with all these criminals that are lower level criminals? Well, the problem is they do get 4 or 5 chances. They do go through drug courts. They do have treatment options. And until they overdose or test positive on like another urine test, they normally don't go to prison until after they've been given lots of opportunities for rehabilitation and to try to clean up their act. And then they end up going to prison. And it's an unfortunate thing. And there's a lot of us here, what we have to do is think about, we have to protect the community from someone who's driving on drugs or bringing drugs into their own home. We've heard those cases where a child gets the opioid in the house and gets overdoses or dies. So those are the things you have to look at too. It's not just rehabilitating the offender. We have to look at protecting the community. My deal as a judge, I'm going to try to come up with some kind of a team approach. I believe get really involved in drug court. I think it's a very, very huge important issue at this time.
I'd like to know what qualifies you to be a good judge beyond your law degree, and why should we vote for you? It doesn't matter. Just each one, not just 1 or 2 sentences.
I would think that besides the experience that I've gained in 39 years of practice, before that being a bailiff, and life's experiences will make me an excellent judge. I think the simplest of these things.
I would concur with Mr. McGinty. I believe it's the breadth of my experience that distinguishes me from my opponent, and I believe that that's what that breadth of experience as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, as a guardian ad litem, as a judicial officer, being a magistrate, all of those things, my life experiences, I believe will make me a good judge.
For me, it's 32 years since the day I began law school, looking toward this day. Instead, in law school, I took the harder courses that were important for someone that was seeking a judicial career, and I was fortunate to begin my legal career for 2 years as a law clerk to one of the best judges that Northeast Ohio has ever seen, who took an interest in my interest and involved me in every element of the process of what it takes to be a good judge. So I learned from that. And for the last, probably since I was a law clerk, I am probably one of the most active mock trial and big court judges around the state. I do every round of every tournament of the Ohio High School mock trial tournament, including the states. I do Case Western Reserve University. I'm doing 4 trials this weekend. 4 case undergraduate. In a couple of weeks, I will do 4 more for the law school tournament, regional tournament, and I also do it for the Federal Bar Association. I've written the problem, and I've served as a judge on the national championship tournament.
Thank you. In addition to my legal background, I think that just looking at a person and who they are plays a really big part. We need people on the bench who not only are going to be fair and impartial, I mean, that's something that we're all up here and we're all going to say that we can do. But we need people who are respectful. We need people who are respectful of defendants, of victims, of defense attorneys, of prosecutors, and everyone deserves to be treated with respect in the courtroom. I think we need people who can be sympathetic, but also can understand and look at every case differently and apply those facts, look at mitigating factors, and try to understand where those people are coming from and treat every case differently based on what brought that person into your courtroom. I'm also a firm believer in being out in the community, and as a prosecutor, I have spent my entire career advocating on behalf of the community and going out to the community. And as I've been campaigning for the past 2 years, I think it's really important that we go out and understand what's going on in each of our communities so that we can better address those issues from the bench. And if I'm elected, you know, it's not going to be you see me every 6 years, it's going to be you see me out in the community on a regular basis so we can address those issues that are affecting the community.
If I could just build on that, you have an excellent question. Everybody asks that question. It's almost like the question nobody wants to ask. But it's a really great question. And we've been out campaigning for a year, you know, over a year. And outside the legal community, you don't, as a lawyer, you don't realize the general voter thinks because you have a law degree, you're qualified. And that's why it's a great question, because just because you have a law degree doesn't necessarily mean you're qualified. So I would say look at the experiences of that individual, professionally and personally, and you're going to have to balance. You've got a lot of great leaders in this room in your community. Talk to them. I know there's other lawyers in this in the room. Talk to them. They have experience with the people, and do some research. Almost all the candidates have now social media. They haven't websites, and there's a lot of information if you look at. And then if you still have questions, the Judge for Yourself is a resource. Judicial Votes Count is a great resource. There's a whole table over here of a lot of literature. Unfortunately, it takes a little time. So that's why if you do an absentee ballot, you can get all the, you know who's running, and you can do a little research on your own. I don't have a perfect answer, except experience balanced with an individual personality.
Hi, I believe that life skills are very important, that you experience a lot of different life skills where you've seen ups and downs so you can relate better to the accused as well as the accusers. And that's just in the criminal courts. You also have civil cases. You may be someone that somebody hurt you, injured you purposely or unintentionally or negligently, and you go to court because now you have medical expenses or whatever reason, and you want to get paid back for what you went through. I think those cases are very important too, and it's really important for a judge to understand what victims go through, make sure that they get heard, what accusers go through, what the accused go through. A lot of times people get accused of something that they didn't do. And it's really important for the judge to be open-minded, treat everyone fair, and listen to what everyone has to say, and be understanding of what everyone has gone through. So those are some of the things that I think are really important, is mainly to treat everyone fairly and allow them to all be heard.
I echo the sentiments that I've already expressed. I'm going to add this, 14 years of representing clients daily in court. You get a real strong sense of the anxiety that is present when somebody is going to court, whether it's for a criminal case or a civil case. I think what's important for me, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected judge, is to never forget that the participants in the process are stressed and nervous and anxious. And it can be as simple as they don't know where to park, or they don't know what elevator to use, what floor, and they're nervous because unlike all of us who are in and out of court every day, and we know the language, and we know where to go, and we know the arguments to make, the citizens that are there who are in the cases don't know all that. And I think it's important from all of us as practitioners, if we're fortunate enough to be elected judge, not to forget and always remember that the plight of the citizen, the anxiety-filled experience of the citizen is what should be at the top of the mind.
We think it's important that the judge have a wide variety of legal experience, civil and criminal.
I'm going to actually go with what Brian Darling just said, and I'm going to have to agree with that. I've probably done thousands of trials. I was a domestic violence prosecutor for a long time, so for 7 years I dealt with victims every single day, and I can tell you that a lot of times they give up coming to court because it's such a stressful process. They have to get their kids ready in the morning and get a babysitter and get downtown, and again, what bus am I going to take and where am I going to go? It's very, very stressful, and then when they show up in court, am I going to be treated nicely, or are they going to look at me like I'm the criminal? I also know as a defense attorney that I have represented a lot of defendants, some of them who are just really nice people that made a mistake, and they didn't hurt anybody else. They knew they made a mistake, and they realized they shouldn't have done what they did, but they're shaking and they're terrified. They don't want to go to jail, and I understand what that's like. My heart goes out to those people. I've also represented some people that weren't so nice, and it's tough to represent those folks. But they all deserve a chance to be heard. They deserve to be confronted by their accusers, and they're entitled to, prevent facts if that's what they want to do. They're also entitled to confront their accusers. So it is a great process. We're lucky to be in America that we do have this great judicial process, and that everyone gets heard. I went to an event the other night, and I was speaking to some folks from Egypt, and they told me in their country that if you get sentenced to death, they take you out right then and you're going. That's it. Your life is over. Where in our country, the great thing is if you get sentenced to something, you have an opportunity to appeal it and fight it if you believe that you're wrong. And it's not an immediate thing, and it's unfortunate that sometimes people are in jail forever, it seems like. But on the other hand, if you're the person who's there, you want to know that you have an opportunity to be treated fair and to also appeal your decision if you think that you weren't treated fairly.
Just a quick question. I never have experience with judge candidates, and so when you behave as a judge, like you are practicing law, right? Based on my understanding, it's kind of like a math equation. I mean, apply for the equation. This is wrong. This is right. But it's law is different as a math equation. So when you practice that, your personal experience your beliefs has much, you know, an impact to the result. How much that one it is. Let's see if you see all the different cases, right? It's online, you can see all of that. If you're the judge for that same case, what percentage I will see? You will see this case, if I handle that, it will be totally different. How many cases you think it's kind of not exactly right, determined? And if you serve as a judge, what could be the difference? I'd like to have, you know, every one of you have just a few sentences to see how much of that you think is fair judged or not. Let's start with Ms. Starr.
I think the challenge for any judge is to put aside your personal beliefs. You know, you may not like the result that the law is going to produce in a certain case, but you've got to follow the law. And you know, if we make mistakes, that's what Ms. Sheehan would be there to catch our mistakes and give us another shot at it. I think the real challenge for any judge, anybody in a position of trust who's asked to decide and resolve a dispute, to just say, well, personally, I'd like to see this happen, but the law says I've got to apply the law to the facts, and this is going to be the outcome. It may be different than what you personally want, but that's the role of the judge and challenge, I think, for a judge.
And to add to that, I'd like to say that a lot of times we might not like the law. We might be thinking to ourselves, oh, I don't like this law. But on the other hand, as a judge, we're going to be sworn to follow the law, whether we agree with it or not. And that's a tough case, because there's a lot of laws out there that probably everybody disagrees with. That's why people a lot of times ask you about legislative issues. But anyway, I don't know what else to say except that we have to follow the law and treat everybody the same and try to be fair with everyone. And we know that if we do make a mistake, that we are going to be appealed, and we'll be told that we made a mistake, and we have to face up to that and follow whatever the appellate court tells us that we have to do in that particular case, so that everyone is treated fairly.
You get right to the issue, don't you? Because you see, we're all human. We all have different personalities. So how do you set those personal biases or personalities aside? And what you're probably going to hear everyone say is, you have to follow the law, and you do the best you can to put your personal biases aside, and you follow the law. Procedurally, the courts are set up so that there are 34 judges on the trial court level. That's what most of these candidates are running for. They do their best. If the decision is, you don't agree with the decision, that's where it comes to the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals in Cuyahoga County, there are 12 judges. Every case is reviewed by 3 judges. And those 3 judges, 2 of them have to agree. So there is an oversight, a check and balance, so to speak, to make sure those decisions are fairly. One personality can't control and usurp the law, so to speak. And you hope your checks and balances work. We're here because we believe in the checks and balances and that they do work. So it's a legitimate concern you have. It's one, that's why you're here, to see who are we? Do we appear to be a fair and balanced person that will apply the law fairly? And we hope that you'll get to know us and earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that is a great question, because you know, if we win, we take an oath and we say that we're going to handle all of our cases fairly and impartially and treat everyone equally. But I think it is an actual concern, because you know, there are people out there say that handle adult cases that may or may not believe in the death penalty. But as a judge, you have to know that you may have a case before you where it's going to be on you to decide whether that person gets sentenced to death or not. And you have to be able to put that aside, right? And sometimes that doesn't happen. Or in juvenile court, maybe you don't believe that a juvenile should ever be tried as an adult. But there could be judges out there who have that belief and will find ways to not find that kid over to be tried as an adult. But as a judge, you have to be able to put those personal beliefs aside and follow the law. And you know, as a prosecutor, I have prosecuted doctors, nurses, police officers, lawyers, a wide variety of types of people. And I believe that, if what you are doing violates the law, everyone, regardless of your status in society or your race, everyone should be charged with a crime if they are violating those laws or held accountable for those.
Yes, following on your question, unlike what would be considered the hard sciences, law is not like a mathematical equation where you have the law and you add the numbers up, as it were, or add the sentences up. Law does allow some interpretation as to what the law is. There is a body of law out there, but not even cases on the same subject may have a little bit of a different view on what is going on, depending on the individual case. And at the end of the day, this is just the way that our wonderful legal system works, is if you have judges who try their best to look at the law every day, understand what it is, and understand how that applies to the particular case, that's the best that anyone can ask for. So in answer to your question, I believe everyone here, if they're fortunate to be elected to the position, will uphold that idea of examining what the existing law is, looking at the cases before them, and trying their best to apply that fairly. And as particularly Michelle Sheehan said, if someone believes the interpretation is wrong and not the correct one, we do have at least one level of second eyes to look at it on the Court of Appeals. And sometimes if it's a truly important question that impacts the whole state, how a particular law is to be applied, there's a certain percentage of cases that even go to the Ohio Supreme Court, and an even smaller percentage of those cases that may even go to the United States Supreme Court. So as long as each of these actors are trying to do their best, that's the best we can hope for. It works as a system.
Thank you. If I would be so privileged to become a judge on the Court of Common Pleas or Division, I believe that that's why diversity of thought is so important. As my panelist has just indicated, the law is the law, but it's the interpretation of the law that we review. And the other piece that I think is so important is that judges have discretion with regards to sentencing. And the largest impact, I believe, occurs at sentencing. Irrespective of the fact that a person may have been found guilty or in a particular case, when that person comes before the court for sentencing, that's when the judge has an opportunity to really review the situation, review the individual, and make some determinations as to what is best for this particular individual and, of course, our community as a whole.
Thank you. Has anybody in the audience ever been on a jury? You would raise your hand. Okay, so we have some jury people. So what I would say to you is, do you remember, did you actually serve on the jury? Yes. Okay, so you had to take that oath. Remember, right before the trial started, you had to answer the questions, just to be honest in your answering the question. Then you had to take the oath to try the case and do the best you could to make a decision, right? And it heightened probably the way you listened to the case once you took that oath. Would you agree? Okay, so as judges, all right, on a daily basis, we're going to be making decisions. Not all the time. Most of the time, we don't make decisions that are called upon of the jury. The jury decides facts, right? And oftentimes, if we're getting to decisions in criminal cases, since 95% of all criminal cases are settled by other than a jury trial, to evaluate the criminal histories that are brought forward, does the person have a prior criminal record, the social history, the educational history, the substance abuse history, all of those things to make a decision on a criminal case. On civil cases, okay, more often than not, there's a resolution by the parties through an agreement. So I think that it depends on what level you're at as to exactly how to answer that question. But just from you when you were a juror, how it is heightened, okay? Every case that we handle, we have to make those decisions and follow the laws. And then just to end up with, there's plenty of laws that say in criminal cases, if you do a certain crime, you shall go to jail. At that point, we don't have discretion. The only discretion we might have is how long is the sentence to be imposed. Okay? It's only on cases where that phrase, that phrase isn't there, where we can consider on a criminal case whether or not release from or not to have to go to prison is an appropriate sanction. So I hope that answers the question.
So I'm coming a little bit late just because I dropped my kids for the activities. One of the, I'm missing a lot of them. I probably try to attend next session, but one of the things immediately jumped my mind. I don't really know who can answer that question or one want to jump in. So recently, just yesterday, me and my coworker was talking about marijuana legalization. So any of you guys can give some thought or contribution of the idea about that, and especially some of my coworkers said, hey, Halloween's coming, worry about the candy passed on to kids. So should some of those kind of thinking go through in anybody want to join me for those kind of comments?
I want to make sure, is the question about legalization of marijuana, or is it and how it might affect?
Just want to get some feeling about opinion-wise and comments-wise, not really, especially about legalization of marijuana in our states.
Sorry, you're not going to like this, but judicial candidates are governed by the canons of judicial ethics, and one of those canons are that we're not allowed to express our personal opinions on issues. Most people don't know that, but in a lot of respects I think that's so we can't dig in on one issue. And it's confusing, really, because if you look at what's going on with the United States Supreme Court nominees, they ask that nominee all kinds of personal questions. And that's a completely different political process. We'll just set that aside. So unless someone here wants to jump in on that, I would categorize the issue of legalization of marijuana, we can't really express it. But I would say, be careful on Halloween and check all your kids' candy. Absolutely, absolutely.
Just when you review all the different cases that you bring into your desk, you guys review that only based on paperwork, or you have to check all the evidence, even the record of the court, when the thing's going on, everything, right? Not just paperwork. Because paperwork could be very summarized in a way, could be subjective, right?
Right,
I think you have to view everything, and then you know the whole thing, then could make the right decision.
You picked up on a very important point, because when I said before everything's reviewed on paper, it's a little bit more than just paper. Please understand, in the Court of Appeals, we review what's called the entire record of what occurred below in the lower courts. That could be a transcript of the trial, that could be recordings, depositions, anything filed in the trial court is part of the record, and that is reviewed. And what you really want in a good Court of Appeals judge is someone who understands that, number one. Number two, that takes the time to go back and look at the entire record, not just what was argued on the briefs, because everything in that lower record is available to be reviewed. And that's actually one of the things I'm very passionate about and will do, because I know you can't just, like I said before, just because you can afford a good lawyer, or you can't afford a good lawyer. What's in the briefs is part of it, but our job is to go back and look at the entire record and look at everything. So good point, good catch.
If I could just illuminate, and part of what this question brings up is we return it to each other in law, and especially if someone such as Michelle Sheehan becomes a judge. It's called standard of review, is that the record is all available for a Court of Appeals judge to look at, but there are certain things such as factual findings by a jury that are entitled to more deference than legal interpretations by a judge. So while the record is open, how that record is analyzed and interpreted by the Court of Appeal sometimes depends on the type of question, and then you're getting into what is called the standard of review on appeal, which is, to all of us, fascinating, but we'll be here for a long time to explain all the various levels of the standard of review. Thank you.
In our deadline, on behalf of all of us here at Westlake Chinese Cultural Association, we want to thank you And also thank you, Meeting, to organize this through APAPA. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And next week we have another forum, and we can take some pictures, and you guys can talk to the audience. And also we have water, we have fruits, and we have snacks.